can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It is your boy Ernie, the Blerd Without Fear. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are focusing on the first salvo of #2 issues for the X-Men Age of Revelation crossover event. Things are kind of heating up and kind of not at the same time. And I feel like this video, we're going to get a very clear-cut answer on probably why a majority of these tie-in books maybe could possibly be ignored. All right, this week we're going to be talking about Amazing X-Men #2, Binary #2, Longshots #2, and Laura Kinney Sabretooth #2. Now, I feel like we've been doing this long enough, I shouldn't have to explain myself, but I will just do it anyway, because there's always that one person. But I'm going to be breaking these books down just in terms of whether or not I feel a title is essential to you getting the full breadth of the story of Age of Revelation, how well any of these books actually tie into the main plot, and that will determine whether they are essential, meaning yes, they do meet that criteria, kind of essential, meaning they kind of meet that criteria, and not essential, meaning they don't meet that criteria at all, regardless of how good or fun the book might be. Anyway, let's talk about it. So let's start with Amazing X-Men. First off, let's go ahead and get this out of the way. This issue does a really good job of filling in the gaps of some things that we missed out on, things that were kind of glossed over, just said and moved on in the X-Men Age of Revelation 0 issue. So everything that had to do with the circumstances surrounding Magic's death, that was just, once again, just kind of just said and like, all right, move the fuck on, pocket sand, and keep going. That's basically what we kind of get to focus on here, is that we're spending some time with Darkchild. Now, for those that are unfamiliar, Darkchild is another part of Illyana Rasputin, something that she has kind of been battling with off and on, kind of the darker nature that she has locked away within herself. And when Illyana was killed off, once again, off panel in the X-Men Age of Revelation 0 issue, we were told that while Illyana is dead, Darkchild survived. And now we know what Darkchild has been up to since all this has happened. Like, we see that she has the Juggernaut as her Demon Knight sometime between the X-Men Age of Revelation Overture one-shot and, the Amazing X-Men #1 issue. She had locked down Psylocke, who had basically been kicked out of the band. Revelation's whole operation, his squad, everything, Psylocke was excommunicated, and quite literally, considering that she is now wearing the X on her person as a badge of dishonor, something that under normal circumstances the X would be a cool thing to have, but in the Age of Revelation, wearing an X on your person is a sign that you are not to be trusted, that you are worth less than nothing. It's like a scarlet letter almost. Now, the whole point of Amazing X-Men is that because Cyclops' present day persona was dragged from the present and pushed 10 years into the future of the Age of Revelation, this was all done because the X-Men needed a Cyclops. They needed the greatest leader. This is something we've already kind of gone over with the previous issue of Amazing X-Men. But what they were trying to do is get to a teleporter so that they could get closer to Revelation. But because of the events of the previous issue, they were unable to teleport directly to Philadelphia, and they wound up in Providence, Rhode Island. So now they need Illyana's help, or rather Darkchild's help, to teleport them where they need to go. But once again, they're dealing with Darkchild, someone who is not as nice as Magic is, and being nice is saying that's doing a lot of heavy lifting. Magic is not always nice. Not to say she's a bad person, but she is not someone who I would describe as nice. But all of that aside, Darkchild wants something in return. And what she wants is a contest between herself and Cyclops. But this is not the type of contest you might be thinking, because if this were Magic, of course, they would be fighting with swords, battling it out until the last one is standing. But that's not how this works. Darkchild is a creature of magic and very much a product of Limbo. And Limbo is all about truths. facing your truth. We've seen this, God help us, going back to the dark web storyline. That was actually one of the major tenets of that storyline, was accepting truth, accepting the fact that some of the darkest things that you think, some of the darker impulses you have, they're not separate from you. They are a part of you. And that's what Darkchild is banking on with Cyclops. And they're having a contest, not of swords, but of truth. And in this contest of truth, it actually looks like Cyclops is getting his ass completely beat. If we were breaking this down as a heavyweight title fight, Cyclops would be literally eating left hooks and right hooks, uppercuts, elbows, backhands, all kinds of business. He would literally be getting worked because Darkchild is hitting him with the greatest hits. The fact that everything that is happening with the Age of Revelation is largely Cyclops' fault, that all the people who have died as a result of Revelation taking over, creating the Revelation territories and the Babels and everything else that's going on, it is all his fault. You can literally hang all of those faults around Cyclops' neck because he trusted Revelation and basically allowed him to manufacture consent, more or less helped him manufacture consent, if you really want to get down to it. And even hitting him with what I feel is probably one of the most legendarily true, but yet also most legendarily tired excuses for why some people don't like Cyclops is that, oh, he was a terrible father, he abandoned his wife and kid. Well, here's the thing, that happened a long time ago, and he is, in my opinion, long since made up for it. But, you look, you can blame Cyclops for a lot of things. Yes. Was he a terrible father back then? Yes. Was he a terrible husband back then? Of fucking course. But what is he today? I would be more worried if Cyclops was the same person in 2025 that he was in like the 1970s and 80s. That would be bad. But anyway, Cyclops accepts all this stuff, but he also is able to hit Darkchild with a heavy truth that even she can't ignore. And it's the fact that Darkchild serves no purpose. There's no point to Darkchild's existence because Darkchild was meant to be a protector for magic, and if magic no longer exists, if she is in fact truly dead, Darkchild serves no purpose. That pretty much ends it. And Darkchild is now willing to help the Amazing X-Men get to Revelation, but there's one problem, is that, well, technically, there's multiple problems, but let's break them down. The real issue is that, okay, Darkchild's gonna help them, but if everything goes the way that they want it to go, Darkchild is gonna be dealt with at some point. Now, granted, if they actually do the things that they need to do, and they stop Revelation, if everything goes exactly the way they want it to go, time is gonna reset, everything's gonna go back to the present, and everything that Darkchild is doing is gonna be undone anyway. But the whole idea that Darkchild knows that if everything were to continue, which it is not, then Darkchild would have to answer to Cyclops for some of the fuckery she has been doing. She has been subjugating people, basically holding the protection from the X virus, hanging that over the heads of humans, basically forcing them to work in terrible conditions to manufacture suffering. And granted, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of humans that deserve that. That's still kind of messed up. You're effectively enacting slavery, basically, is what you're doing. You're enslaving these people. Even though the X virus is worse than the enslavement that Darkchild's inflicting upon them, they have no choice. There is no real choice. Go out, face the X virus, either die or become a mutant, or maybe a little bit of both. I don't know. Maybe become something worse. I don't know. We've seen some people transformed by the X virus and it really didn't turn out much better for them. That said, it's either that or be enslaved. Take your pick. And Darkchild will have to answer that. But once again, she probably won't because, once again, they're trying to reset the timeline. Same as it did with Age of X and Age of X-Man and Age of Apocalypse. Before this, it always comes down to going back to the way things were before the timey-wimey shenanigans or whatever. Now, you've also got to deal with the fact that they have to take Psylocke along with them. And, well, they don't really have to, but Cyclops wants Psylocke to come along with them because he, one, wants a familiar face. And to be fair, during the From the Ashes era, Psylocke is kind of the ride or die for Cyclops in the present day. So probably would be nice to have someone who he's a bit more familiar with, who he knows what they can do. And while yes, Psylocke was really all in on Revelation from the word go, and she still kind of seems to be in that mindset even now, she does actually know the truth about what Revelation's doing, so it's gonna maybe potentially make her wise up. I don't know, it's one of those things where personally, in the Age of Revelation, because pretty much everything is on the table, I don't trust this version of Psylocke. I just don't. I feel like this is a version of Psylocke because of the nature of how Kanan was usually depicted. She kind of always likes to serve. That was kind of her thing, being a weapon, being a tool of other people. Even though she has come a long way since then and has stepped out on her own, deep down at her core, kind of similar to characters like Marrow, who very easily throw themselves in with cults and crazy people. I could easily see this being a game by Psylocke, but she's not necessarily lying, I don't think, about what Revelation's planning, which is probably why Apocalypse is feeling some type of way about him right now, kind of feeling like maybe he chose the wrong person to be his successor, which, Apocalypse has already expressed that. To get away from all that, I think it becomes pretty obvious at this point, and I think I've said this before, I don't think it's going to be a surprise to anybody, but Amazing X-Men #2 is essential. This is the core title of the Age of Revelation. There is no actual Age of Revelation book, but at the same time, technically there is, and it's called Amazing X-Men. This is the book you read if you want to get the main story of what's going on. And yeah, to say otherwise would be foolish. Next up is going to be Binary #2. This particular issue kind of answers a question that I posed at the end of the previous issue of Binary, and we got a pretty quick answer. Honestly, felt like it was a pretty obvious answer, but hey, stranger shit has happened. But no, the thing that we wondered about in the first issue, who is the identity of the person who has been helping the X-Virus truthers, try to rebel against the artist formerly known as Captain Marvel, now known as Binary, once more, because technically that's an old name that Carol used to go by, but is now going by again now that she is the Phoenix. But I mean, let's keep it a buck. It's Madeline Pryor. Who else would look like Jean Grey and be incredibly skilled in magic and also kind of be on that bullshit? Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be Maddie. It's gonna be Maddie every time, just about. Now, the real thing here is, what is Madeline Pryor's game? What is the Goblin Queen's game in all of this? And honestly, I kind of feel like it might boil down to one of a couple of things. The real thing here is, and I would forgive anyone for not knowing this, but you would have had to have read Dark Web just keeps coming up. I hate it here. But no, you would have had to have read Dark Web to know that Jean Grey and Madeline Pryor are no longer enemies. They're no longer even really frenemies. They have come to an accord. They have an understanding between each other now. And I would imagine in the 10 years that has passed since the present day, Madeline probably feels some type of way that Jean Grey is dead, and Jean chose Captain Marvel to pass the Phoenix on to. Now, I don't think Jean made a bad choice, because honestly, I don't think Maddie would be able to handle having the Phoenix. As a matter of fact, we've kind of gotten a taste of this in the Jean Grey series. We kind of got a taste of how Madeline Pryor would respond to having something like the Phoenix Force within her grasp. So we know that it would be bad news. It's not a good look for anybody, even in the Age of Revelation. But I love that this issue does kind of focus a little bit more on how Carol feels being the Phoenix. I mean, we got a taste of it in the first issue, but we know that she's not sure of herself in this role. She doesn't have the level of expertise with the Phoenix Force that Jean would. Even worse, now Carol has access to powers that she normally would not have. She was already, like, I know a lot of people love to make hating Captain Marvel their whole personality, but here's the thing. Captain Marvel is one of the most powerful people in all of the Marvel universe, at least in terms of raw power. She's an energy absorber. I mean, basically, not just energy, really just any kind of energy just about, with the exception of magic. That's the only energy she can't really like get jiggy with on any major level. And it's not even really so much that like it hurts her, more than anything else, would, because like, oh, it's such a weakness. It's just that, kind of similar to Superman, she has no natural defense against it. So basically, magic affects her the same way it would affect anybody else. That's like the one thing she doesn't have, any kind of a bead on. But now she has telepathic powers, things that she's never had really before. So now she's having to figure out how to do what Jean used to do, but also recognize at the same time she can't do what Jean does. And that's kind of the whole point of the story. And now that I've said that that's kind of the whole point of the story, is this book essential? No, it is not essential. Matter of fact, for as much as I was kind of hoping that the X-Virus shenanigans would kind of play a little bit more heavily into this, and technically they kind of do, but not in a way that I feel like is really just helping the story out in any, or like, I won't say helping this story out, but helping out the main Age of Revelation story. I don't feel that's the case. This feels, for the most part, outside of Jean's death as a result of the X-Virus and having to deal with trying to protect the rest of the universe from being infected by it. Outside of that, this book doesn't really delve too terribly much into the core story of the Age of Revelation. So I'm saying no, not essential. And that pains me to say that, because, once again, I love Carol Danvers. I think she's a great character. She's one of my favorite superheroes. I put her right up there with some of my other favorites like Daredevil and Black Panther, Moon Knight, and even Jean herself, Monica Rambeau, one of my pretty much all-time favorite heroes overall. And once again, as much as I want to see Carol get nice things, this book is, while a nice thing, it is not an essential thing. All right, before we move on any further, I do want to say, if you are getting anything out of this video whatsoever, and we are probably a little more than halfway through the rest of this, consider hitting that like button. It really helps the channel out. Also, if you want to make sure you catch more of my videos, because there's some videos that YouTube does not like to recommend, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tap that notification bell. That way you don't miss out on those videos, because while YouTube doesn't want to recommend them, I'm pretty sure you all would get a kick out of them. Also, there's a new feature on the app if you're watching on mobile called Hype. So hey, help a brother out, use that Hype. It helps push my video out to even more people that would normally be ignored by the algorithm. So it helps get this video out in front of more eyes as a way for you to help your favorite creators out. So hey, if I'm one of your favorite creators, hey, use the Hype. Anyway, let's get back to the video. All right, next up is gonna be Longshots number 2. So what is up with this series? I think probably to the surprise of no one, as we talked about before, the Longshots are Mojo's new TV show that just happens to not really have anything to do with the actual character Longshot, and they're being sent on what is effectively a suicide run to try and take out a power plant and to try and get those ratings. But the thing is, it's not going very well. It's going so not well that we are already seeing the bodies hit the floor in this issue. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm not 100% jiggy with the way some of this goes down, because yeah, I get it, the Age of Revelation has done a lot. A lot of things have happened, but there are some characters in this, and I'll just go ahead and say, it's Bishop. Who is this guy? I don't recognize this Bishop. Honestly, you know what? I take that back. I do recognize this Bishop. I feel like this is a Bishop. This is a version of Bishop I feel has had his mind wiped and has no memory of the 30 plus years of character development that he has had since he was an angry black male stereotype. He is now just back to being dumb. And when I say dumb, I mean 1990s era Bishop levels of dumb. Back during a time where he was probably the worst angry black male stereotype in existence. He was always on 11 at all times. He was always snapping, always going off on people, never ever really having much of a coherent thought. And that was for a very long time in his publication history. And if you don't believe me, go check out this video I got up here, and yeah, you'll see what I'm talking about. The 90s, despite being the time when Bishop first appeared in the Marvel Comics universe, it was the absolute, well, I won't say absolute because Civil War and the whole Messiah complex, Messiah War thing, that was a thing too. But that was one of the worst times to be a Bishop fan other than when he first appeared. I feel like that's the version of Bishop they are giving us in this book. And yeah, I don't like it. That said, I do like that while Longshot, this book being called Longshots, there's not really a lot of Longshot in that first issue. Well, this issue, we learn a little bit more about what Longshot has been up to behind the scenes, learning how he is going to get reinserted back into the proceedings, and more importantly, maybe how he's going to try and reinvent himself for a whole new audience. Or maybe show people how the classics still kind of slap. I'm gonna go ahead and say it. This book's not essential. It's a funny book. It's a fun book. It's an entertaining book. It is probably one of the less serious books you're gonna read in Age of Revelation, and that is in a crossover where books like Sinister's 6 and Undeadpool exist. I will go into right now, don't look for the X-Babies to be doing anything in this issue, even though technically they're on the front cover. They have little to no factor in this whatsoever. But once again, still a fun book, just not an essential one. Last, and most certainly not least, is going to be Laura Kinney, Sabretooth #2. This issue definitely kind of sets the record straight on whether or not I think some of you guys are going to stick with this book going throughout the rest of this whole Age of Revelation crossover. So when last we left off, Laura Kinney had iced her former love interest, at least in Prime continuity, and now hateful ex in this current continuity. She had just recently iced him, and she was planning to send her son to Morocco and hopefully escape the Revelation debacle. She was trying to get him out of that, get him away from everything, let Gabby and Akihiro do their thing, be the aunt and uncle that he needed, help raise him up in safety without fear of being drugged into Revelation's machinations. And then something turns around, and a fate that was kind of teased for Laura, something very similar that has already happened to her father, Logan, now known as the Angel of Death. Laura has been affected by Revelation, and now the question becomes whether or not this is the first time Revelation has used his power, his ability to not only understand every language, but control people through it, whether or not he's actually used his power on her before. And I'm gonna go on a limb and say the answer is very likely yes. She is now turned around. She does not have any desire whatsoever for her son to go to Morocco, despite the fact that she wanted him to just prior. She now is listening to Revelation because for whatever reason, Revelation seems to have an interest in her son. While granted, at this particular point, her son is not revealed to be a mutant. He seems to be of the belief that he is. There's also something very telling that Revelation says when referring to her son Alex running off to Morocco. He doesn't necessarily say no one is allowed to get away from the Revelation territories or to leave the Revelation territories. He says no mutants. Now, once again, Revelation could just be speaking facetiously or whatever, but he does include Alex in that, so he clearly knows something about Laura's son that maybe Laura isn't even aware of yet, something we have yet to actually see play out. Now, when last we talked about this, I'm pretty sure I said that Laura Kinney Sabretooth #1 was kind of essential. So I'm gonna say kind of essential. Kind of essential. There you go. It's kind of essential. It's a little essential. Little essential. I'm gonna change that, and the reasoning behind why I'm gonna change that is because of some of the things that come up in this issue. Because towards the end of this, after we see Laura taking the Seraphim out on a run against the mutants who are trying to leave for Morocco, We see that Alex does, in fact, get away with Gabby and Akihiro. They get to Arako, but the problem is, while Revelation was not necessarily telling the truth about Arako, he wasn't exactly lying either. Arako has cut themselves off from Earth. They don't want anything to do with Terran mutants anymore, and it's largely because of Apocalypse. And Apocalypse appears towards the end of this issue. And what we kind of see play out, well, yes, it's kind of more focused on what I feel is foreshadowing that Alex is going to be revealed to be a mutant, because they're kind of implying that a Circle Perilous is going to be enacted, something very similar to what we saw during the Krakoan era, where mutants would have to fight to the death, or to kind of prove that they were worthy of getting their mutant powers back if they lost them during M-Day. Well, it seems like Apocalypse is going to be doing something similar with any of the Terran mutants who came to Arako seeking asylum. He is going to force them to have to fight it out, or like prove themselves in some way to decide whether or not they're a welcome on Arako. And while I don't think that Apocalypse is going to force Alex to fight, it doesn't seem like that's the energy that Apocalypse's troops are coming after him with. It seems as though Apocalypse is only really focused on making the adults fight. I do feel like Alex is probably going to be forced to watch, and we all know how mutant powers work. Not all the time, but more often than not, they usually show up in moments of great stress in kids about roughly Alex's age. But the reason why I am kind of changing my opinion on this book and, saying that it's no longer kind essential, it's because this book does actually stick pretty close to Revelation. This is one of the things I've always kind of feel is like a softball way to figure out whether or not any of these books actually have any weight on the overall Age of Revelation story arc. We are actually seeing Revelation move in these issues. We're seeing his connection to Lara. We are seeing that he has greater overarching plans, and even more so, we're seeing that his direct opposition, Apocalypse, is being brought into this, and we all know that Apocalypse is going to be playing a major role in this. So even though technically this book largely is kind of slick, self-contained, is doing just enough to raise it from the ranks of kind essential to essential. So that is everything with the Age of Revelation tie-ins this week. Like I said, we'll see how this goes, but I have a feeling that just kind of like with Lara, Kinney, Sabretooth, I feel like a lot of books are going to be shifting in terms of whether they're essential, kind of essential, not essential, just based on, what the story is that week. And I've been saying this for a long time, but it was that way with Age of Apocalypse. I mean, really, we're keeping it a buck. It's that way with a lot of crossovers. Sometimes tie-ins are essential, sometimes they're not, and sometimes they're somewhere in between. But I feel like Age of Revelation is really going to be like that, probably more so than we've seen with just about anything else. But anyway, you guys let me know what you thought about this week's Age of Revelation offerings. Are you checking out any of them? Do you have any books that you're enjoying out of that? Or maybe tell them about some books that you're enjoying that aren't related to any of this. Anyway, make sure you hit that like button on your way out, and if you're on mobile, use that new hype feature to help the channel out. And of course, as always, if you're not already subscribed to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tap that notification bell. That way you don't miss out on anything. Keep it plus ultra until next time. We out of here. Peace out.